Cartel Radio. I'm thrilled to be joined with my buddy Ben Harris through the magic of the internet from jolly old England. How are you today, sir? Well, it's nighttime where you are, but how are you, sir?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's 9:15 here. Got home from work a couple of hours ago, but yeah, it's all good here.
Fantastic. Appreciate your time today. Uh, Last we spoke, the Labor Party was on the run. They were losing elections in places they had never lost elections before. Boris Johnson was riding high. The Conservatives were as good as they'd ever been. My, how times change in a big old hurry. He now has an approval rating somewhere around a cholera outbreak. What happened? And in a short period of time, it can't just be COVID because COVID's 2 years old now. What's going on over there?
It's a combination of things. So, historically, compared to US presidents, I was looking at the data earlier, and even Tony Blair, who of course won three elections, two of them landslides, even he was only popular, or as in net popular for his first few years. We don't tend to like our prime ministers. So for most of the last 40 years, they've been underwater in terms of net popularity. Not like the US, where you often get presidents who, I know Biden isn't at the moment, but for a long period, presidents are often at least a few points above. But Boris Johnson is in a really bad state at the moment, and you're right. It's not just COVID. I think it's a combination of things. Firstly, it's the scandals, the personal scandals. He's had this, I don't know, this wallpaper thing whereby there was, I don't know, there was public money supposedly used to wallpaper his flat in Downing Street. There was, of course, the Christmas party gate, which I think we can call it a gate now, where there was allegedly a party that took place in Downing Street last Christmas. Against the COVID protocols at the time, which wouldn't allow that. He's got some woman who he was with and who was a mistress who's been telling all over the last couple of years, and that doesn't look good for him. And it's a sort of a constant slew of different things. There's of course the Owen Paterson scandal, which wasn't directly linked to him, but it didn't look good on him. It's all these different things whereby he's just seemed to be not setting a good example. But I think also possibly the COVID rollout of the vaccine was very good, but I think perhaps people were lulled into a false sense of security of thinking that COVID as a whole would be over and that would be that. And of course that hasn't happened, unfortunately.
Now, the rap on Boris Johnson when he first got into office. Now obviously a member of parliament, but he kind of first came to fame as the mayor of London. His rep was kind of as a bit of a chaos agent. There's a bit of personality to him. Of course, in America, he got a lot of Trump comparisons, even though I don't think those are completely analogous other than their suspect hairstyles. But he does have that outsized personality. He says things he probably shouldn't say. That was kind of his rep to start with. So when we get into this drip, drip, drip scandal thing, it's kind of just drowning out all of the good stuff that he may be accomplishing because it was kind of the preset condition for a lot of folks in the first place, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think we also have to consider that at the 2019 election, a lot of people voted Conservative, not so much because they liked him, but because they really didn't like Jeremy Corbyn. So I guess it's a bit similar to the Joe Biden, Donald Trump thing. In this case, Corbyn was the Trump and Johnson was the Biden. He was seen as simply the lesser evil. And also I think as well, in terms of an ideology, he doesn't seem to have much of an ideology. He often sort of goes with the wind, and he doesn't seem to really have a plan for sort of how he wants to shape the country sometimes, and that can be quite bad. It's people sort of don't know where he stands on a lot of issues, and but yeah, there are good things, but you're right, they're getting completely drowned out by all these scandals, and that doesn't reflect well on him at all.
We got a lot of mileage on talk radio shows in the States of him trying to explain his plan, where he went through a various thing before he finally got around to it being a more feminine plan, and everybody's like, well, what's he talking about? He's very glib. Is there any way for him to dig out of this hole, or is he in a spiral now with the way things are kind of moving in the politics of the UK right at the moment?
I mean, it's hard to say. So the polls have decidedly shifted against him in recent years. I mean, to be fair, there were periods like this in the past under Theresa May where she was quite far behind the polls, although didn't turn it well for her in the end. But I mean, Labour have really opened up quite a big lead at the moment, and it's probably a combination of things. The sort of the coronavirus is probably having an impact as well, but it's hard to say because he has come back from things before. But I think the point I would make is that he's basically ticking off both sides. So the people who wouldn't be affected or as affected by the scandal, people who just wouldn't care because they just see it as lefty nonsense or whatever, they're not happy with the coronavirus restrictions that are about to be imposed, and they're really not happy about that. And of course, the people sort of on the other side who do care about who want the restrictions, but also care about the scandals, they're not happy with the scandals. So he's not really, he's losing sort of people on all sides, and that's the problem. And it's hard to see where he really goes from this over the next couple of years.
You already touched on it, but the big part of the equation that is different now, it seems, than before is the absence of Jeremy Corbyn. Is that just kind of the big thing? Because the current Labor leadership, it's not like they're super charismatic. Is it just Corbyn became so unpalatable for so many people, and in my opinion anyway, for very good reason for a lot of things? Was he just that bad that he just sucked everything down to that level, and now you're seeing things kind of bounce back out?
Possibly. I mean, in Keir Starmer's first few months, he wasn't that popular. People didn't know much about him. And to be fair to Keir Starmer, I don't really rate him that highly, but at the same time, I don't really disrate him that highly. I mean, if he was Prime Minister, I wouldn't fear for the future of the country. I mean, I wouldn't agree with him on many things, but he's pretty inoffensive, really. And actually, the Labour left probably hate him more than the Tories do. He's quite inoffensive. I think people don't see him as a threat, whereas they saw Corbyn as a threat, and rightly so, in my opinion. So I think Starmer just having the benefit of simply being inoffensive. Again, this is very similar to, in this case, he's quite similar to Biden as well, actually, in many ways. He's simply seen as inoffensive. He's not necessarily clued up in a lot of cultural issues, and of course, he doesn't have the same kind of horrible links that Corbyn had. So he's benefited from that. But having said that, if he gets more examination, he may come under pressure. We'll wait and see.
Do you see an election coming anytime soon, or do you think it'll be sometime next year before this thing sort of sorts itself out?
I think it'll be a while before there's another election. I think we have election fatigue because we had those sort of two elections. I mean, we were supposed to have an election. We had an election as planned, 2015, and we're supposed to have another one in 2020, and we ended up having two in that period, 2017, 2019. The next one isn't due now for, I think, until 2024, probably 2023. I don't think they'll run next year. I think people are just simply too electioned out, and with COVID, I don't think it's just not going to be feasible. So I think it will be it's looking likely maybe spring 2023 or spring 2024, no later than that though.
And beyond COVID, the issue before that kind of got everybody burned out on elections and Parliament in general was, of course, Brexit. Do you think there's still a hangover from Brexit or an after effect of Brexit, or do you feel like the country's starting to move into the new normal of, okay, this is what it is. The sky didn't completely fall, but we've got policy issues and things to deal with leadership wise. Is that where you're at now? Do you think you've kind of got over the hangover of it, or is it still a dominant issue?
Brexit, I'd say, is mostly a non-issue. I mean, today actually, of course, I work for an MP, and we obviously get correspondence about lots of different issues. And we had a Brexit email today, and I was like, "Oh, that's a nice change," because we haven't had one of those for a while. And I'd say Brexit as an issue is now no longer. It's not really. It may come into the fore again because obviously there are issues still to be resolved. But Brexit simply, to most people, it's seen as being done, whether they agree with it or not. There's a small and militant sort of group of people who want to rejoin the EU. But overall, I think Brexit is in the rearview mirror, and it's not really that much of a big thing these days. It may crop up again, who knows? But at the moment, it's not.
You teed it up perfectly. So what are the issues that the people, at least the constituency that you're serving and working for your MP, what are they talking about? Is it economic? I'm sure COVID's in there a lot, but what's some of the things that they are talking about, just kind of the rank and file folks that are passing their information up, wanting issues dealt with?
So COVID is the main issue. The COVID restrictions are definitely the main issue. We've received quite a lot of emails about that. The Christmas party, for example, or the non-Christmas party, whatever it was, there's been quite a few on that, on Boris' leadership in general. But then you've also got the generic issues, like we occasionally get abortion crop up. We'll get the big bills that go through Parliament. So, for example, there's been a new borders bill, so the regarding who can come into the country. We've seen quite a lot about that. We've had there's been a new healthcare bill. That's, for example, so you've got all the generic bills that come through Parliament. We all get stuff like those, and then we've got the of course, COVID restrictions and all sorts of things like that. But I think at the moment, it's COVID. That's really dominating everything.
We're talking to Ben Harris over in the UK. More with him right after this when Hertel Radio returns. back with Ben Harris, who's laughing because I was just remarking on his Aston Villa jersey. I keep wanting to say Aston Villa, and I don't really mean it because I don't really have a dog in that fight, so I apologize. But for people watching on the Facebook feed or YouTube, he's got his team collars on there. How are you over in the UK today? Yeah, now he's kid. Okay, that's enough. You don't have to kiss him. But your day job, when you're not supporting your side, as they say over there, you are working for a member of parliament. One of the dominant issues over there lately has been the migrant crisis. You have people trying to cross the channel. You have, unfortunately, people dying trying to do it. It's really came to the forefront lately. Is there a lot Parliament can do about this? Of course, Boris Johnson's getting tremendous pressure on this because he's the leadership, but practically, is there a whole lot y'all can do with this? And tensions with France are not good anyway, but what can actually be done about this issue? Because it seems like just kind of a mess that's kind of unfixable at the moment.
It is hard. I mean, obviously the UK sort of sea border on the south coast is nowhere near as long as, say, the US-Mexico border. But even then, it's hard to have people at every point. There are things that can be done, but I think a lot of people overestimate what the government can do. And of course, when people arrive, I mean, as I know, I understand, it's just to sort of say, oh, we'll send them back or don't house them, but they still need to be housed. They still need to be treated humanely. You can't just completely, treat them, like they were, animals. Whatever. You have to still treat them with respect, and that, of course, takes up resources. And I do understand people's anger there, but yeah, I think it's a process, and you can't simply deport people straight away. There has to be a process that has to go through. And of course, there are lots of people coming in, and that does obviously attract attention. And of course, the French are not helping. The French are really not being helpful there at all, because obviously people traffickers are ultimately the ones that are capitalizing off this, and that's what we don't want.
Is it nefarious stuff, or is it just normal migration patterns? Because we see in Eastern Europe where there's some real nefarious stuff where the states like Belarus and others, where they're kind of pushing this stuff. It's more nefarious. There are parts of the world, Vladimir Putin's kind of specialized in this, Erdogan in Turkey, where they have weaponized migration. Is that what's happening here, or is it just a spike, or what do you think the root cause behind this is all of a sudden?
I wouldn't go that far. I think it's simply a case that for France, it's often easier to let them go because there's obviously a lot of these migrant camps in sort of the north of France, and I think they probably just don't do. They probably just it's a case of deliberate neglect. I don't, as I said, I don't think they're trying to cause mischief. I think it's just easier for them to let them go. But at the end of the day, I don't know why there's so many now. I think there's a perception that the UK is this sort of benefit haven. It isn't, but there's a perception both inside and outside the UK that this is a place to be if you want benefits, and I think that still endures.
Speaking of havens, one strain in US and UK, the special relationship we call it, was after Afghanistan. Has some of that died down, or is it still kind of fresh in folks' minds? Because we and the complaint in Parliament among most of the MPs was that they kind of got stuck with it because America's leaving. Now we're stuck with having to leave, and they felt a little bit of an independence issue there, even though we're obviously allies. Has that died down, or is that still a little bit raw?
You don't really hear much about it nowadays. And personally, I think it's sad that Afghanistan is no longer an issue because, of course, what the Taliban are doing there is kind of just being ignored. People cared for a few weeks. Now they just don't really care, even though the Taliban are doing exactly what we thought they would do. And, millions of women, especially women and girls, are being, their rights are being completely away. And life is a lot worse for a lot of people there. It's not really an issue anymore. And I think a lot of people, to be fair, probably a lot of people just in general here had the view as, oh, we should have got there long ago. I don't think it was one of those issues where I don't think the government made the case of why we were there, unfortunately. Right. Just the same as your government. I don't think your government really made a good case of it even. I think it's a failure on all our sides, and I don't think the blame can be very much shared out among everyone.
Yeah, and aside from the blame, though, the British troops on the ground and the British diplomatic personnel, they carried a lot of that load from talking to folks over there. So the on the ground allyship is strong because the British troops really did some yeoman's work. They did a lot of the dangerous and some of the really rough. They did a lot of the diplomatic load. I don't think a lot of people realize of trying to process the people they did get out. So we want to make sure we honor the troops and the folks on the ground because it wasn't their fault. They were just trying to clean.
Oh, of course, no, they did a brilliant job, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of those pictures, those were British troops on the walls there, so we want to honor them. All right, the one that we covered on the show a couple days ago and got some response because people thought, "What in the world?" There was the reports of there was traces of drug use in the halls of Parliament. You work in Parliament. I want you to keep plausible deniability. We don't want anybody getting in trouble here. But the reports that there was traces of cocaine in the bathrooms, that there was some pot being smoked. Does Parliament have a drug problem? Because the Speaker of the House of Commons had to address it and say he's going to take it very seriously. So how seriously do we take this?
Personally, I've never seen any drug use in Parliament, but then again, I live quite a sheltered life. I've never touched drugs myself, and if you showed me a bag of cocaine, I'd probably think it was flour. So I probably wouldn't even know if I was looking for it.
Duly noted.
Having said that, where I used to work in Parliament, so we recently moved office because they're renovating the building. But where I used to work, the break room, it was right next to the break room of all the armed police officers that used to patrol the estate. So I think if you're going to do drugs, that's the absolute worst place in the whole of Parliament to do it. So you probably wouldn't have had that much done there. But I can definitely believe that there's a lot of drugs being done in Parliament, as there is in society in general. But yeah, I can believe that.
Is it one of those things where just some of the people are doing stuff? They're like, man, I hope they're on drugs because at least it would explain some of the behavior.
I think sometimes people think about me and I think, oh God, he doesn't drink, does he not? On drugs? What does explain Ben's nuttiness? But there you go. I can assure you, I am not on drugs. Everyone who's listening.
A British man that doesn't drink. This is interesting. How did that happen? I'm gonna put you
I still on a taste. I'm drinking water right now, but I literally don't like the taste of alcohol. That's purely it. There's no bad experiences. I'm not a Mormon. I probably wouldn't make a good Mormon, but I'm not a Mormon. There's no religious reasons. There's no bad experience. I just don't like the taste.
I will forgive it because I still know your horrific take on garlic is far more of a character flaw.
Yeah.
I don't know why you don't like garlic. We're going to work on that though, my friend.
It's the taste, the smell, everything.
The special relationship relies on you holding up the culinary standards of Great Britain, and you've got to start liking garlic. We're just going to have to fix that. Ben Harris, it's always good catching up with you, my friend. Thank you for giving us a little wider viewpoint on what's going on over in the UK. Let folks know where they can find you on Twitter and stuff, because you are a good follow except for your bad food takes and your questionable football fandom. So where can folks find you?
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, and he's Ben Harris on Twitter. Look him up. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.